So you mean you resigned without telling her?
Yes,
Why?
yes. I'm ready to really grasp into the identity of the new identity, not only the one who just worked for someone else, but working for my own.
Have you ever dreamt about being an entrepreneur?
Wow. No, because
What can determine you as a successful person is your ability to fail. Hi everyone, my name is Tanya Gromenko and welcome to my podcast Seasons of Courage, where we meet inspiring people, uncover their life stories, and hopefully this will make you feel inspired to make and to take a courageous step in your life. Before we start, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. So let's dive in. Today we have a very inspiring guest, my good friend Vina Muliana.
hi.
Welcome, Vina.
Hi, Tanya. It's nice to see you.
Thank you so much for your time. I'm really so excited to hear your story, and I feel it will make a lot of people feel inspired. So maybe just a short introduction about Vina. So Vina is actually quite a well-known personality in Indonesia. She is Forbes 30 under 30,
Yes.
right? And very popular for her HR-related tips, career-related tips. And she has been working in the corporate world for a very long time, I guess like 10 years? Right?
More, like 12 years.
12 years.
Yes.
As an HR, right?
Indeed.
And recently, she took a courageous step in her life. She made a decision to actually transition out of the corporate world into entrepreneurship and content creation. So I'm really excited to hear your perspective about how you actually found the courage after so many years of being in corporate and living a stable life, right?
Yeah.
So let's maybe uncover this topic.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So, what makes me brave enough to leap to go away from the stability corporate life is I think because I've worked for so many years. It's like 12 years already. After I graduated college, I immediately got into the corporate world and never stopped since. Up until 12 years itself. And the past 5 years, as you guys know, and also we've met you before, I also having like a two worlds personality. Like at the day job in the weekdays from 9 to 5, I work in the office. And then after that, when I get back into the home, I create content, I manage my platform and everything. And it's a non-stop journey for like for the past 5 years.
Yeah, and I remember when we met, I was questioning like, how do you do all that?
Yeah, I know.
Remember, I was asking you like, why do you still keep your
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's because I still have so much learned to do in a corporate world. Up until like last year, some things occurred to my mind that if I want to have like more time for me, for my family, and other stuff related, personal stuff that me and my husband wanted to achieve, I think the one thing that we don't need right now is time, because time is one limited resource, right, Tanya? So immediately after that, I started to think about, I think I need to choose one of these two worlds, either the entrepreneurship one or either the corporate one. And by that, it's very hard. It's very hard because I work in a stable job, and it's like a job that many people dreamed of. Corporate, the company is very stable. The job pays well, and also my coworkers. There are no problems with my coworkers as well. So I feel like why would I exchange the pleasure and the stability for what I want to achieve and dive into the uncertainty of the entrepreneurship, right? But then I read one quote that says, growth hurts, but stability kills.
So powerful.
Growth hurts, but stability kills. So immediately I thought like, Oh yeah, I think in order for me to give myself a room to grow, to feel more empowered, I think to be able to do things that I only dream of to do, and every little thing that I want to achieve, I think I need to be able to have a courage to really step into the uncertainty. So that's why when I have the idea, I talk to my husband, and there's a discussion over it. And finally, we decided, okay, I think it's time, because over the past 12 years, I've been in many positions. I've doing many projects, and I think the experience that I gain is quite enough. So I think I've already built a quite good currency of what what I've done recently, and then that currency I take to dive into the entrepreneurship and the uncertainty world. So I think that's the story. Because by then if people ask me why, I think it's because I want to have I want to grow. I think I want to grow and to be able to do things on my own, to be able to build something and more to impact more people. And I think that's only been feasible if I step out of the corporate world.
Wow, that's so inspiring. Like, first, I feel like it's really important to understand that, like you said, time is a really like a limited currency.
Exactly.
It's something that can never be replaced. Like we cannot earn it back, right?
Right.
So, and I feel like what you did is like you really was like really sharp on your vision. Like what do you want to achieve? And another step is you realize that it will be painful, right? But
Exactly.
every growth requires courage, and it will evoke pain.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you cannot grow without
Pain.
going outside of your comfort zone.
Exactly.
basically.
Even I watched one podcast earlier, and they talk about passion. Do you know that the word passion as actually means to suffer?
Oh, really?
Yes,
In what
it's
language?
it's a Latin word. Comes from a Latin word. Actually, it actually translates to suffer. So if you're really passionate about something, you need to be able to really accept that you will be suffering in order to do that or achieve that. And I think it correlates with growth. You never be able to have a broaden your comfort zone without feeling painless. It's not gonna be painless. It's gonna be a lot of pain. You have to deal with a lot of uncertainty. But I think that's the part of having growth in yourself.
Yeah.
Because whenever you feel like, oh, this is so hard, why would I trade my stable life for this? I think your 5 years, your 10 years from now would thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for the options that you took
Yeah,
earlier.
I agree with that. And I've also heard like we as people, we are so afraid of suffering.
Exactly.
We are wired to actually avoid situations which potentially can cause us to suffer.
Yeah.
But actually, this is part of life, right?
Exactly.
This is something that makes our life even more meaningful, more interesting.
Yeah.
Because if our main purpose is to avoid all suffering, then first we will never achieve this purpose, and second, it will prevent us from making decisions which will make us grow, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Once again, growth hurts. It's gonna hurt you that much, but stability kills. Because one thing that's always gonna occur in this world is change.
Yeah.
Whenever change happens, you need to evolve, right? And it would not be stable. It requires you to adapt. It requires you to grow, and it's not gonna be easy. But if you feel like you're enough, you're not gonna go anywhere, you're stable in your position, then you're just gonna be like that. You're just gonna be. You're not gonna be evolved. Even like when you read what you call it, like a Darwin theory of evolutions. The one who can evolve is the one who can change that much. You're the one who can adapt, and in order to adapt, you have to be able to grow.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm curious, have you ever considered yourself as an entrepreneur? Like, have you ever dreamt about being an
Wow.
entrepreneur?
No, because my family and my husband's family, none of our closest family related was an entrepreneur. So we don't have the vision, we don't have the picture of what's a day in the life of an entrepreneur is. But when I started content creation 5 years ago, that's where I actually taste like the world of entrepreneurship, because being a creator is kind of like a being your own boss and managing your own production and managing your own team and everything, and that's the taste of the entrepreneurship that I know. And it's hard, Tanya, actually, at first, even when I have to deal with the both world as an employee and as a creator, right? But as the time grows by, you get more better and you get more better and you get more accustomed to the life of this is the life of an entrepreneur. Yes, it has a lot of uncertainty. There's one time that I don't know what to do. I don't know which one is right, which one is wrong. I don't know this path is quite enough, or is this like too risky to be taking on. But I feel like the saying that the bigger risk you take, the higher the gain that you got.
Yeah.
Now, and that's the life of the entrepreneur. Whenever you are brave enough to get the high risk, I think the return that you get is much more higher.
Yeah.
Because of being a creator for 5 years, that helped me to build the identity of the entrepreneur. And then right now I can say that I'm ready. I'm ready to really grasp into the identity of the new identity, not only the one who just worked for someone else, but working for my own.
And like a lot of people are talking about employee mindset and entrepreneur mindset. What do you think is a difference in skill set or mindset?
I think the most different mindset is the way you handle uncertainty. Because when you become an entrepreneur, there are nobody that's gonna help you or tell you what to do, or even make you assure that you're gonna be fine.
Yeah.
That's different when you become an employee, right? Whenever you have like a job, every day you will come to office and you finish the jobs,
and you have a paycheck,
and you have a paycheck every single month.
Yeah.
So actually you're gonna be stable with the routines and everything, right? But for entrepreneur, I think it's not like that. Maybe there's a time that you don't have like the results that you're dreaming of before, or maybe you just have to figure it by yourself. Or in the first years of my creator life, I have to do all of my things on my own before building up the team and everything. So yeah, so I think that's the skill. That's the very differentiate what kind of an employee and entrepreneur mindset. And also I think the difference is like the striving what you call it, the striving
ambition.
And the striving whatever happens, I will just try again, and I fall and then I'll try it again. So the ability to be able to stay positive
and to fail, like failing is fine, it's good.
Okay, fine, okay, we'll just try it again. Tomorrow we'll try it again. I think is the part of the entrepreneurship journey.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And in fact, I feel like what can determine you as a successful person is your ability to fail. And I always say to my students, for example, like, collect failures. Do not be afraid of failures. And if you ask any successful person how many times they failed, they'll say like infinite times, right? So don't be afraid of failures, because every failure is a lesson, right? But like, I am curious, how did you change your mindset to deal with uncertainty? Or is it because you were keeping your full-time job, it kind of helped?
Yeah, at first it helps. So whenever I feel like I don't want to be focusing more on the creation, I still have like a stability paycheck, right? Because I'm still working in corporate. But few years earlier, I started to feel like it's not just the uncertainty that I'm looking of. It's the freedom of freedom to choose what I want to do for my time. I think that's the most valuable one. I think even when you work in corporate, you cannot eliminate uncertainty. You cannot eliminate uncertainty. Maybe the risk is lower than become an entrepreneur, but the uncertainty of the business is still there, right?
Exactly. Especially nowadays when you can get laid off anytime.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when you become an entrepreneur, the risk is even higher. I think just be able to see things from positive side. I think it helps. And making sure of yourself that this is okay, this is part of the job. If you're okay, if you're having a positive outlook, then everything's gonna be okay.
Yeah, it's how you see life, right?
Right.
Glass half full or half empty, right?
Right. I think that helps me to deal with uncertainty. It helps me a lot to also calm myself when I know that, oh my God, I think I'm gonna ruin this thing. But I feel like we need uncertainty because uncertainty what I told you earlier, it keeps us growing, right? It keeps us be able to think more creatively, to think more thorough, to know that okay, it might work, it may not work, but by the end of the day, I'll be okay. I think to have that assurance, that self-assurance, I think it's a key to be able to deal with uncertainty.
And I'm curious as well, like what was the reaction of your family to this?
Oh my God, I've just talked with my mom like last night, and she was telling me that I haven't told her that I was gonna be resigning from my job. And last night when she was in my house, and she told me like I cannot sleep for 2 days after I saw your video that you are resigning from
Also,
the job.
you mean you resigned without telling her?
Yes.
Why?
I don't know. I don't want to have like so many conversations and
So it's
many.
like you decided and then you just want to do it.
No. My husband knows. And
Yeah. But like, why you didn't tell the mom?
Because I don't want to have like the discussions, like a ongoing discussion of things. Like what I've mentioned to you before, most of my families are not entrepreneur, right? So they don't have the vision, and they don't really dealt with uncertainty just like what I do. So the discussion is gonna take very long.
So you just didn't want unnecessary comments at that stage. Okay, Okay, clear.
So I'm just gonna post it on my socials, and everybody knows, and my mom knows from also my socials, and she was shocked. My father also shocked, but last night I assured them that it was for the best. This is not like a reckless decision, right? This is a very articulate and very thoughtful decision that I've been what you call it, like I've been thinking with my husband. We've been thinking for the past 1 year or maybe 6 months. So it's not like immediate impulsive decision. My mom and then my mom and my dad was agree on that, but because they were my parents, they're my parents, so they have like this concern with their daughter. But I think they're fine now.
Wow, but I'm so impressed how confident you are in yourself, because if you just decided, I mean, with Fidel, your husband, of course, but like without really telling anyone else, it shows to me that you are really confident in what you're doing. And you kind of like don't need validation or approval from other people. You know what I mean? Because I feel, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but especially in Asian cultures,
yes,
it's like the approval of parents matter a lot.
I know. Yeah, true. Especially when it was like a big decision, right? I don't know. I think because I have like a quite big of self-assurance of my decision, you know, Tanya, I don't know whether this thing may work or may not work. I don't know. It may work, it may not work. But one thing that I know of, and I'll also tell this to my husband, is I'm gonna be okay. So I think that self-assurance kind of helped me to really take this big leap towards without telling anyone. Many of my friends also know it from socials because I don't really tell them, except my coworkers, because I put the 2 months notice, right?
Yeah.
They also shocked, but you know, it's part of you. When you become entrepreneur, it's the business revolves around you, right? The when you started to feel like I will be working for my own, then it's all about you. Whether you feel like you're positive, then the results can be positive. But if you feel like it's gonna be negative, then it's gonna be negative. So having like that mindset and having that picture and a vision of what things gonna be unfolding, I think is very important.
Wow, it's important. I really agree. Like what you say to yourself is true, right? No matter if you are saying something negative to yourself, it is true, right? If you are saying something positive to yourself, it is also true. It's basically like you create your own reality.
Right. Many people will still be like, "Oh, you're too delusional."
Yeah.
You're too delusional. It's like delusionally positive to yourself. But I think that's just me. That's just me and who I am.
Exactly.
And I think that's my strength. That's my strength that I really need to carry on, because not many people. Yeah, I do really need to be able to step on the world and see what's happening. It's not all positive, I know, but to have that self-assurance, I think that's very good, because that's what keeps you still motivated each day, even though that you're not know what's gonna happen and unfold next.
Yeah, I can relate to you on this. I feel I'm the same. I always see the positive sides, and sometimes I'm questioning, like, is it toxic positivity?
Yeah.
Am I too positive? But actually, I feel like it is just automatically in my mind. Like I always try to see the positive things. And to see the world as a great place.
Exactly. And you know that energy is contagious. When you are having a conversation, a positive conversation for yourself, then you will attract that kind of the same person for
the same
you.
vibes.
The same vibes as you, and you can also like making the energy contagious for others. And I think that's a really beautiful part of it, and vice versa. When you feel like very negative on you and you feed yourself with negative thoughts, you're also gonna attract the negative people with you. So keep being open-minded. I think it's not like a delusionally positive, but I think the best word to describe it is to stay curious. When you stay curious, I think it will eliminate you to look down on people or making you to look delusionally positive. So you would be able to really understand about the surroundings and how things unfold. I think I'm just gonna stay that.
Wow, that's so impressive. Stay curious. I feel like it's relevant in my life as well. Like, and sometimes when we talk about like, oh, I start a business, then I want a specific outcomes. This is what I want to do. We try to be too controlling of the process.
Right.
Instead of, like you said, staying curious. Like, wow, that's exciting. I want to see how it unfolds for me.
Exactly. And I think that's also what makes you open for another opportunities, maybe, and another chance that you might not have before. It opens you door to people that you haven't known before. I think the curiosity really plays a lot. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. So, what is your plan right now with your entrepreneurship journey?
Wow.
What's your vision?
What's my vision? I think I'm just dropping it here, Tanya, because this is my first podcast.
People want to know.
Right. So basically, I'm just gonna will focus more on my content, and also I have like a collaboration's gonna be out soon with Tanya Gromenko called Bebas Kerja. So looking forward for that. For those of you who wants to start your remote worker journey, your freelance journey, Tanya and I will help you to do that.
Yeah. So you're going to just share your expertise,
Yes.
your skills,
Yep.
and increase the impact that you make on people, right?
Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully that with my platform and also with the platform that we built together, I can have a more significance in other people's journey of their career, to be able to have to give them the options if they need. I don't want to have to be. I don't want to tell you that resigning is the best option. No, here I'm just gonna have be able to. Here there's a lot of options when you talk about career. There's like a corporate world. There's like a freelance job. There's also like the entrepreneurship one. So each one comes with the different pros and cons. So you should
And I
be
guess
able-
it's important to mention that it's not about promoting the entrepreneurship here,
Right. It's about understanding yourself, I guess.
Yeah, understanding yourself and what you want,
Yep.
and what feels right to you.
Exactly.
Because corporate job also has many benefits. Entrepreneurship has many benefits.
Exactly.
I guess we are more talking about the transitions, from one to another.
Right.
And just taking steps to choose
Right,
what feels right for you.
Right. Because in corporate world too, you need to be able to grow as well, right? In order for you to be able to promote it, you get promoted, and to fill in the higher position. It takes courage as well, especially you transitioning from one company to another. It takes also lots of courage for doing that. So I think there's a pro and cons in different kind of a career journey that you choose, whether it's a corporate, whether it's freelance, whether it's entrepreneurship. I believe you know what's best for you. My advice would be to choose it to be self-aware when you choose it, and to really have a self assurance of things that's gonna be all right. You don't really know what's gonna happen next. We all do, but I think if you talk to yourself that it's gonna be all right, then it's gonna be all right.
And how, maybe as a last question for you, how to develop this mindset,
Wow.
positivity? Because I understand you are naturally like this, right?
Yeah, I know.
So for people who are more, for who it doesn't come easy.
Yeah,
What
I
to do?
know.
What's the first step?
What's the first step to have like a positive mindset? I think the best way to be able to not just have a positive mindset, but positive outlook generally, is to stay curious. So instead of judge things easily, if there's one thing or many things that happens to be like, oh, why is this like that? Why is this like this? You just have to be able to stay curious first rather than judge it. So instead of like put it your judgment first, you just kind of like ask a question. Okay, can you help me to be able to run to your thoughts so you come up with that kind of conclusion, maybe? Or maybe, can you help me to really understand your point of view so that I can see yourself, your perspective more easily? I think to be able to more curious is helping us to see things in a neutral way, rather than positive and negative.
Right. Wow, that's so amazing, because I recently saw this somewhere, that all situations and circumstances are actually neutral.
Yeah.
We only give them meaning ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We give the meaning based on our views, our values, and our beliefs, right?
Yes, or expectations, what's the outcomes that we want.
Exactly.
Right? But we sometimes don't even know what is the best outcome for us.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So I think stay curious makes you more in a neutral zone rather than positive or negative, so that you can see things in a way that, I can give this judgment, but I can sense and I can appreciate your thoughts because you give me the sense of your point of view.
Yeah, or the situation.
And the situation,
happening. Wow, that's so full of wisdom, I feel.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Vina, for sharing.
Thank you, Tanya.
Yes, I feel that it's really like very inspiring what you've been through and what it taught you. So I feel like a lot of people, not necessarily those who just want to move out of corporate into entrepreneurship, but actually everyone can benefit from it.
Yes.
So thank you so
Thank
much.
Thank you so much, Tanya. Hopefully the people and the watchers can really have a, like insights from our talk.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys, for
Thank
watching
you.
this episode, and I hope that it gave you the courage to stay curious about life and to believe in yourself, to have that self-trust, to actually pursue what is close to your heart, what feels true to you. So thank you so much, and please, before we end this video, don't forget to like this video and sign up for my channel for the next episodes. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.